Yo, Shortbox Nation, welcome back. And if this is your first time, welcome to the show. My name is Bader Milligan, and this is the Shortbox Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about your favorite comics with the people who put their blood, sweat, and tears into selling them. That's right, this is a local comic shop appreciation episode. I'm recording this episode live from Black Cat Comics here in Jacksonville, specifically Riverside on Stockton Street. Black Cat Comics has recently celebrated its one-year anniversary. They opened for business officially last year, March 1st, 2025. They recently celebrated 1 year of being in business, which is worthy of a celebration of its own. But what I like about Black Cat, in that short year that they've been in business, they've not only served the local community with great comics. They have an awesome selection of new comics, old comics, back issues, graphic novels, trades, you name it, they got it. They've also built their pull customer list in the past year. They have hosted in-shop signings with the likes of Al Letson, the writer of Mr. Terrific Year One. Hometown hero, come on, man. They support, and that leads me to my next point, they support the local indie comic scene here in Jax. They've done a lot of great things in the last year that they've been open. I've been fortunate enough to call myself a patron and friend of the shop. It's my second home. You know, I've rep Gotham City Limit all day, but I love spreading my dollars and my joy around the different comic shops, and I've been a patron here, and I'm actually sitting here with the owner of said shop. His name is Dan Hastings, to learn about what it's like running and owning a comic shop in the year 2025, 2026, right? I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. I want to know what it's like running a comic shop in this day and age where absolute Batman reigns supreme. You never know what image number one is going to be a spec book and sell out. I want to know all the juicy details of owning a comic shop in today's time. And now, without further ado, let's turn our attention to our guest of honor today. Shortbox Nation, it's Dan Hastings. What up, Dan?
What's up, Bader?
How you doing?
So much for having me. Dude, I'm great. Thank you so much. And like, I'm so surprised that, you know, I've obviously listened and watched your podcast and all of that, but that you didn't just take like the most giant breath in the entire world before you did all that. Like, no breath in between, nothing. You're just going at it. It's crazy.
Dan, can I tell you right now? Yeah, that was a lot. I was going to ask you if it was as awkward to sit through that as I think it would, but
not even the slightest bit awkward. I'm just impressed with your lung capacity. That's all, man. That was a lot to get out in one breath, which was awesome. So yeah, not the slightest bit awkward.
Nah, I appreciate it, Dan. Dan, one, it's an honor being here. You closed down the shop for me to allow me to set up today and chat with you, and I appreciate that. I'm sure the Shortbox Nation does too. Was there anything I was missing from that list of accolades I named? That was everything I could think of that was, you know, a milestone or significant to mention in terms of your 1 year of being open here at Black Cat. I said, you know, you got to grow your customer pull list this year, obviously. That was an easy one. You've done in-store signings. You had Al Letson here last weekend. Aaron Hazori was here a couple months ago. You know what I forgot to mention? Is that there's a motorcycle driving by us. It's a very busy street that we're recording on, so you're going to hear plenty of gnat sounds. But I forgot to mention that you ended up winning Best Comic Shop in Jax from Folio Weekly. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that was, my God, like talk about surprises. I was not expecting that. I had no clue. It was insane to me when I got that. And I'm just, you know, of course, like so thankful of all of my customers and everybody who voted for me on that. For the people that nominated me and everything, I was like, holy crap, man, we haven't even been open a year and they want to vote me Best Comic Shop of Jax. I really appreciate that. And, you know, in like a long-winded way, there's so many good comic shops in Jax. Like we have, you know, I could shout out every single one of them. Variant Vault's like a new one. Those guys are super awesome. Cosmic with Bobby, one of the coolest places in Jax. Obviously,
Gotham City Limit.
I was about to say, obviously, Gotham. You got Ben. I mean, I had a pool there forever before I opened this shop. Love those guys. Love Jonathan. There's just some really, really cool stuff around Jax. So obviously, you know, I have some really, really supportive customers to be named Best of Jax in 2025. So I really appreciate that. But I think every comic shop in Jacksonville is the best of I don't know, anything you could possibly imagine. So
yeah, I agree. We are. I was thinking about that on my drive here. Was that we're fortunate. I mean, you said it. You know, we're fortunate to have so many great comic shops within driving distance, right? Each one of those shops that you mentioned, I think highlight the very unique geographic positioning of Jacksonville, it being so wide, so much landmass, that all those shops can exist, and they're all in different, parts of town. So I always thought it was interesting that no matter where you're at in Jax, you're, within a 15-minute, 20-minute drive. It's like a really great shop, Yeah, I mean, you gave everyone a shout out. I guess I'd like to know, in your words, and because we're here to celebrate you, so you can get a little cocky with me, Daniel. But in your words, what do you think makes Black Cat Comics stand out from all those other great shops we just named?
So I'll say this, and everybody has their niche, of course, niche or whatever the proper pronunciation of that word is.
We don't care about pronunciations on this show. Ask me about that.
Well, again, everybody has their thing, and everybody's really good at their thing, which is another really cool thing about Jacksonville. I would say here, kind of what I try to emphasize and all of that is local comics. That's a big part of what I'm trying to do here. A big part of what I set out to do whenever I opened the shop was really support these local creators. And we have so many amazing local creators in Jacksonville. Obviously, you can see that from stuff like DCAS and things like that. Some of these guys, sell their stuff at some of the big bookstores around town and stuff like that. And I felt like there wasn't enough of a local connection with the local comic book creators. So that's what I wanted to do here. I wanted to make sure we had as many local creators as would put their stuff in here. I'm like, hey, sell it to me. I'm buying it. And I try my best to, this is like, I guess a little, maybe too behind the scenes. I don't know. But, make sure that I support those local creators by not doing commission sales, by buying outright from them and then selling in store. That way they can walk out of here with cash in pocket for, their hard work and everything. And then I can sell it. But I think that that's been something that's really, really helped a lot. And something that's built like a community around what I'm doing here is supporting local comics.
That's well said. And I think, big shout outs to the DCAS people out there, Tony, James Green, everyone involved in that group. But man, I had something I was going, you mentioned something, I just lost it. So let me pivot into another question I have. When you think back in the last year, which is basically, all of 2025, if you could pick one totem to represent what that year meant for Black Cat Comics, and it can be in any shape, any form, whatever it may be, but what shape would this totem be in when you think of 2025, owning a comic shop in 2025, the first year of Black Cat? Like, what is the totem you would pick?
That's a really hard question. I don't know.
I think totem is a very esoteric question. I should just ask, what word, if there's maybe one word that comes to mind that encapsulates, the first year of owning a comic shop?
I'm going to say for me, it's definitely community. That has been the biggest thing, because we can all, anybody can get enough money to open a comic shop. Anybody can sell, new releases and back issues and all of that. You have to build a community around it, and you have to satisfy that community. Like we both know, we both shopped at local comic shops in Jacksonville for a long time. And there's been so many that had a community around them. They serve that neighborhood, that area, whatever. I have people driving from Middleburg or the beach or Green Cove or wherever it is, to come here to Black Cat. And then same thing with a lot of the other shops. Ben's got people coming from, probably Georgia to come to Gotham and stuff like that. And that's one of the biggest things, is you build that community, and then, they're very loyal. They come to your shop and all of that. So yeah, community is the word here. Like I feel like I say it like 20 times every day.
I think that another benefit that you've got, now you got me thinking about like geographic benefits. And I would say that does extend to Black Cat, is that I know for me, I was very welcoming of the idea of a comic shop being open and once again back in Riverside.
Yes.
I think, for personally speaking, I think you actually share some of this history too. One of the first comic shops, that I ever really had not only a pull list, but I got to work, a very big involvement in, was, RIP to it, but Universe of Superheroes. That was like one of maybe the second shop I had ever had a pull list, but that is in my heart like the one. But so it was great to have a shop in Riverside. I always felt like there needed to be a shop in Riverside when you consider Riverside has always been considered like the artsy side of town. This is where very art centric people hang out, and the arts can kind of thrive. So it always rubbed me the wrong way that once the last shop that was in this area, I think Coliseum, it was went out of business or decided to move locations. That there was. It felt weird having a gap, whatever. I think it might have been 2-3 years before you opened up and, brought back that energy. So I think there is that benefit to Black Cat, but also your location specifically being here on Stockton Street, sandwiched in between, in this strip of shops, Tiger Records, Bold Bean. What's the name of is it a Thai spot on the corner? Food Dog. That's right. 13th Gypsies is here. Zincog. I think this is, an area ripe for foot traffic. And I want to talk about that because as I was setting up the cameras and stuff in here, there seemed to be like a couple of kids in here. Yep. And not only are you located with other great shops, but the thing that separates you, I think, is the foot traffic that comes from residents. That there are literally people that live here that can walk here, 5 minutes out, 10 minutes out. And it looked like the case for the kids that were in here. I heard them say, hey, let's go back to your house up the street or something like that. So I would like to know in terms of like how much does foot traffic account for your business? Like how much of it is like thoughtful kind of curiosity versus just kind of like spur of the moment wandering? Like where are foot traffic coming from? Like, are you noticing like brand new people, that aren't maybe comic fans entering the shop?
That is the best thing about this shop. I'm actually really glad you asked that because I wouldn't have thought to really talk about it if you didn't. But the greatest thing about this shop and this area and everything is that the mix out here is insane. I have so many pool customers, so many more pool customers than I thought I would ever have, just a year in. And then on top of that, there's so many families walking around this area. There's so many people visiting, so many people pull off off I-10 or 95 and come to check this shop out. So it's such a healthy mix of people in the neighborhood who miss, shopping right up the road at Universe or Black Hive or Superhero Hive and then have set up a pool here, as well as, just residents in the area, people stopping by to check out, dinner at 13 Gypsies or whatever it is. It's so supportive out here, and everybody, I feel like almost everybody who walks into Tiger Records and picks up like a really sick vinyl, stops in here too to see what it is, and then picks up a comic book, or everybody who's waiting on their bike to get fixed, stops by, and they might not be into comics at all. And they'll tell me this. They'll say, I've never read a comic in my life, but I'm going to buy one of your t-shirts because it looks cool and I just want to support you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's such a great mix of people who are into comics, people who have a pool list, and people who just want to come by and check it out.
Yeah. I want to ask you, I want to talk about the range of merch you have here. And then you mentioned something about your original expectations about the pull list and being surprised at what you got.
Yes.
But I think I want to take a couple of steps back and ask, where did the inception of wanting to even own a comic shop come from? You mentioned that, you had a pull list with Ben at Gotham City Limit. You've shopped at Universe, and you mentioned Black Hive and Superhero Hive. So obviously you were, a customer first, you were a fan first before you ended up, coming on this side of the comic fandom. I guess, where did the idea of, what was the transition from comic fan to comic shop owner? Comic shop frequenter and customer to owner.
So that starts with all the way back, like I'm 42 now. So when I was 8 years old and I was picking up those like Chuck Dixon, like Robin comics, I was like, this is my life. Like I love comic books. They're so cool. I was picking up those, and then transitioned into like more indie stuff. And then, as I got like a little bit older, like in like my teenage years and stuff, started really getting into Marvel superheroes and stuff like that, Spider-Man, everything. I've always been as far back as I can remember, to like 8 years old, I had a pool at Zeno's, which in Arlington. So, I'd go there and pick up my 2 or 3 books a week that I could. And, then ended up, once I could drive and everything like that, coming out here to Riverside and, shopping at Universe of Superheroes. I'd go to Jerry's bookstore, hit that every week with my Blockbuster paycheck and get whatever like ASM
Dan,
keys I
what you're
could.
basically saying is I'm not new to this. I've
Not
been
even close.
true to this.
Yeah. I've been into comics for a really long time, and I've been a heavy collector for a really long time. So I want to say by the time that I was like a preteen, 12, 11, 12, maybe 13, something like that, it's always been my dream to own a comic book store. So that's all I've wanted to do for a really long time. That's all I've worked towards for a really long time. I got my first job, at Blockbuster at 16 years old, saved up as much money as I could, and then, worked in my last job for almost 20 years and saved every penny that I could to open a comic book store. So the second that I felt like I had enough in that account, I was like, cool, time to retire and open my comic book store. So that's what I did.
I love that you think this is retirement.
This is definitely retirement.
And I guess I would like to know, did you ever have anyone try to talk you out of it? I mean, I know comic shop owners love talking about owning, a shop. So I know I've personally seen, the struggles of owning a shop, obviously the joys of it as well. But, I guess knowing what you know about the difficulty of owning a shop, especially when we were frequenting them, in our younger years, it seemed like it was a very difficult thing. Like you really had to love doing this. Did you have any hesitance at all, based on what you know, the different shops that have come and gone in our area, just speaking about our area specifically? I guess, was there any ever hesitance in wanting to own one?
Definitely not ever any hesitance. I've seen a lot
or caution.
Yeah, I've seen a lot, firsthand, talking to the shop owners and experiencing, shopping in those stores and everything throughout the years. Some of the stuff that goes on, again, we have some great stuff here, and we've had some really phenomenal comic shops throughout the years that have unfortunately closed or whatever happened to them. But I look at things like, certain shops that have stopped carrying new releases and stuff like that. And shops that, obviously everybody who was open during the pandemic, kind of what happened there and everything that happened with Diamond. There was a lot of stuff. And I will say most people I've talked to, before opening my shop were like, there's no way you're going to get rich. Like, it's not like you're not making money. Like it's for the love of it. Like, that's why you got to open a comic book store. And I feel like I've always known that, I'm fortunate enough to be able to pay myself and stay open, which is super cool.
Yeah.
I obviously don't have, like a huge stack of employees or anything like that. It's basically me and like two other guys who cover a day or two off for me. But yeah, there was a lot of advice, from more seasoned comic shop owners who were like, do this because you love it, not because you're going to make money. Like this isn't, that type of career. And I knew that going in.
Who are some of your, would you say were some of your North Stars in terms of, I want to model Black Cat after, this comic shop or my favorite comic shop owner? Like, I guess, who are some of who are some of your favorite shops and shop owners? Like, I guess I'm trying to figure out what makes for a good shop and what shops have you personally experienced that you were trying to maybe bring that here?
There's so many. I'll narrow it down to two that I really look at as role models and inspirations. Obviously, James at Universe, that's probably my top. I loved that shop. I loved the vibe, and I think that everyone can see, how the vibe, spilled over into this. It's a very, I don't know, for lack of a better term, maybe I'll sound pretentious saying this, I hope not, but like metal or like punk rock vibe, like a do-it-yourself kind of vibe. We're not, trying to make this look like a cartoon. Like it's like, everything's kind of hand painted. You got painted black behind you and stuff and a mural on the wall and stuff like that. And that's the kind of vibe that I like. I think that really fits well for the store, but a lot of that is borrowed from Universe. Universe was a huge inspiration, and the way that James ran that shop was a huge inspiration. And just the community in this area was a huge inspiration. The other one, and I'm going to sound like a tool because I can't remember his name, but the guy that runs Neighborhood in Savannah.
Okay, I'm familiar.
Can't remember his name right now. That is the most community shop I've ever seen in my life. It's like every single Wednesday he's got a local creator in there doing a signing. He's bringing in kids, teaching them how to make comics. Like it's so focused on the neighborhood and so focused on the community around it that I feel like that's probably where a lot of this community aspect came from, and wanting to be involved in that, comes from neighborhood comics. So again, can't remember his name off the top of my head. Super, super cool guy. And, before I opened, I reached out to him because I didn't know him personally, but I'd been in his shop multiple times, and reached out to him through like Instagram or something, and just very responsive and very like, yeah, I'll help you out with whatever you need, like any questions you got. So super, super cool guy. And on that note too, I know I said I'd narrow it down to 2, but let me just for real shout out Ben as well. Ben is a really good guy. He always took care of me when I was a pool customer at Gotham. And he's got a lot of great advice, and he's very successful in what he does. So Ben as well. But yeah, those are my
that's a good I think that's a good mix. When you think of like the ingredients of that make Black Cat, universe for the look and the feel, the community aspect from neighborhood comics, and then like just seeing how, because I will say I think Ben is just such a smart businessman. He's not only passionate about comics, but he's also very smart on the business side. And I think that's a great mix. I guess, thinking about, opening your doors the first day, March 1st, 2025, what were some of the personal goals that you had for yourself that ended up panning out, at the end of the year, or at the end of your first year, and maybe some that you're still working towards?
So that one's so interesting to answer, because I'm not going to lie, I'm one of those people that expects very, very little. I was just excited to see people even walk in the door when I opened it, because I had no clue. I didn't know if people would be interested. I didn't know if, a lot of people would be like jaded in the area to come to a comic book store after the closure of what was, the last shop in this area. And again, like I didn't know if this area, like if a lot of people in this neighborhood still collected comics, like have moved on to a shop that's like maybe a little bit out of the way, or whatever. I wasn't sure. So I really didn't know if people would care at all, if people would come, if I'd get pool customers, if I'd be more of like kind of like a little tourist attraction or what. But everything has like 100% exceeded my goals. Just the people coming in here and being so supportive, the people that, walked in here on day one and set up a pool list, which there was a lot, and
that must feel like I guess, can you describe that feeling of someone wanting to set up a pull list? Because they're essentially saying, hey, I like this shop enough to come back at least once a month, if not like every Wednesday. I trust you to have my books. Like I'm going to build, whether it be like a deep, relationship that's more than just a transaction. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're basically saying like, yo, you're my shop.
Yep.
I think that's got to feel pretty good as a comic shop owner.
It feels amazing, because just like you broke it down, they're comics, but there's a huge level of trust there, because I think we've all been to a comic shop before, at some point in our collecting, that maybe didn't have your book for you, or maybe there was like a hot book out that week and then they sold it or something like that. And things like that happen. And there's things behind the scenes that can cause that, but to know that your local comic shop owner is like looking out for you and get you the books that you want off your pool and all of that, and like trusting you with that is a big deal. I won't lie. I'm over a year in now. It's like a year and like 8 days or something today. And every single time somebody walks in, they're like, hey, can I set up a pool here? Like, it feels so good. It feels insane. I'm like, just like you said, it's like such I don't know, like an amazing thing to be like, okay, you want to come out here,
I got you.
Like, and get books from me when you could go like anywhere else that you want to go. It feels amazing. It feels so cool. So I love that.
I want to ask about. Let's get into some real comic talk here.
Yes,
and I want to talk about some of the different titles that people are pulling. Can you tell me what are some of the most obvious, popular ones? I mean, I could probably name them myself, but I'll let you do that. And then tell me what are maybe the least. Then what are some of the pulls that are least expected? Like you're like, oh, okay, maybe some specialty orders. Like, is there anyone that you're ordering just one thing for this one person? Like, what are some of the titles that you're seeing? Popular titles versus like sleeper titles.
That's a really good question for out here, because it's so different than what you would expect. I feel like, at least what I've experienced out of their shops, obviously you have your huge, tent poles like Absolute Batman. I mean, no one can hold.
Does it go without a doubt that is the most pulled book for you?
Oh my God, it's on every single person's pool here. Wow. There's like 3 people who don't have Absolute Batman.
Okay, so it's not hyperbole in saying like it really does reign supreme.
Yeah, it's huge. But some of these have been like huge surprises to me as well, because obviously you have the absolute titles and they're all pulled very well, Batman being the most, followed by Wonder Woman, Absolute, Martian Manhunter, and so on. You have like really big books that I feel like are huge other places. Amazing Spider-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe, that are smaller here.
Interesting.
In my first few months, I would order heavy on those titles, order like 25 copies of G.I. Joe, whatever issue it was that was out then. And then I'd sell like 3 and be hung with the rest. And I was so surprised because I'm like, okay, I know at these other shops, these sell crazy numbers. But at the same time, something like Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, Rite of Spring, the current miniseries or the one that just ended with issue 6, I'm ordering like 60 copies of and selling out. Like, that's crazy. I don't feel like that's happening most places. Indie titles sell really, really well here. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sells really, really well here. I knew Battle Beast would sell well, but that's, also at the top of the list. There's so many things that that sell so well here that I didn't expect. Matt Fraction's new Batman run, obviously it's Batman, and I should have known that would sell like crazy. But based on kind of the numbers I was seeing with other DC stuff, I was like, okay, well, maybe issue 1, like 50 copies is good to order. No, not at all. I could have sold that in the first hour when it came out, But yeah, you learn a lot, and then those titles selling, horror titles and stuff like crazy out here.
Man, I guess I never thought, I'm talking, now you've really got me thinking about like the geographical, some nerdy comic stat bullshit. But yeah, I guess I didn't even think about, all right, not only are we talking about all these different shops in different geographical locations, some of the, we mentioned the benefit for you is the walkability, the foot traffic, being close to residential areas. But that would also mean that the audience, the demographic, the taste in comics are also different as well. And I guess it goes back to what we were saying about Riverside and it attracting like the more of the artsy, the indie crowd. That's very interesting to see. And I guess speaking about, you mentioned some of these comics, but you mentioned Battle Beast. Yes. And if I'm correct, that issue 1 came out, I think, the week you had opened, or like very close to it.
Very close. I can't remember the exact time, but yes, very, very close.
So I decided to look up what were the top selling comics in March of 2025, the month and the year that you opened. And I'm just going to name some of these, and you just tell me what comes to mind, any anecdotes or any stories. But it says here that March 2025, the number 1 best-selling comic of that month, according to ICV2. They put out like a monthly best-selling list, sales rankings based on comic store POS data. So that's what we're running with. But it says for March 2025, Batman number 158, which was the first issue of Batman Hush 2, was the number 1 title. What do you remember of Batman 158 or Hush 2?
So that one's super fun because what I remember is, look, even now, even a year in, I'm not one of those shops that, people are banging down the door to, when I open on Wednesdays. It's just not a thing that happens out here. It's a much more casual, chill environment. Everyone's got their pool. So, they're a little more relaxed about picking up stuff. So I haven't had to worry so much about like a line being at the door when I open on Wednesdays, with the exception of that book, because, oh my God, like people were like, yo, I'm here for Batman. And I'm like, oh, cool. The book that I ordered like 22 copies of. Awesome.
Oh, shit. Wow.
So again, like an instant sellout on that one.
Wow.
I had my pool customers covered, and then, I had the first 10 people that walked in the door. And then after that, I was like, hey, I'm going to try to do a reorder for you and see if we can get some more copies in. Or, sorry, hopefully you're okay with a B or C cover.
And that's and I feel like that is such a dice roll because, people, you got to capture people in that moment.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to those big selling books, those spec books. People want it in the moment. And if you tell them I can, it's like the quickest way to end a sale is like I can order, those words.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's for me, for probably you, for a lot of people, that's that's okay. I'm going to come back here for, my pool or whatever, but I'm going to drive to another shop and see if they have it.
Yeah.
That's an automatic. So
that is a pro, on the customer fan side, that is a benefit of having so many great shops.
Yes.
And I'm guilty of it where I'll be like, okay, all good. I'm going to go stop by the shop down the street.
Yep.
Because they might have it.
Yep. We've all done it. But yeah, that was a very big one for me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to bring up. That was my first line.
Okay. And maybe, because I remember you guys did didn't you guys do a midnight release or
we
some
did.
sort of release for it?
We did a midnight release. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Damn, you must have picked up from, Tiger always seems to have a line out the door when they have record store day.
God, yeah.
It must have been nice to be like, yeah, we got a line outside my yeah. Okay, so Batman number 158 was the best-selling comic on March 2025. Number 2, it says Absolute Flash number 1. So Absolute Flash number 1 came out the same month that you opened. Any thoughts about Absolute Flash?
Man, Absolute Flash is so cool. It's such a good book. I remember reading about it beforehand that Jeff Lemire was kind of saying something. Don't quote me because I don't remember exactly, but something along the lines of he wanted to tell his like Peter Parker Spider-Man origin story through Flash. So that's kind of what he was aiming for. So it was so different from the rest of the Absolute universe because that's not how any of the rest of those books are set up. Like that one's very unique in that way. And I feel like it's almost like a sleeper because, a lot of people grabbed number 1 and number 2 and number 3. And then a lot of people were like, okay, I'm not going to pull Absolute Flash anymore. It's too slow for me or whatever. And then more recently, people have been like, okay, it's actually really picking up. This is really, really good. So Absolute Flash was really interesting because, again, it was another one of those books, kind of like Battle Beast, where, right out the gate, I didn't know how well something like that was going to do. I knew a lot of people were interested in the Absolute stuff. I know when it comes to, the DC Trinity, Flash is a little bit lower there. It's not part of it. So I was like, I don't know exactly what to order here. But yeah, completely sold out of number 1, day after release. So
I think it also speaks to, I'm sure this wasn't planned. You tell me if it was or wasn't. I'm assuming it was not planned that, you were going to open in the middle of, this absolute frenzy, where, I'm looking at the rest of the list. Spoiler warning, Absolute Flash number 1 debuted that month. Absolute Martian Manhunter debuted that month. It actually was number 4 best-selling comic of that month. And then obviously, literally, this is the top 10 list, all right? Batman number 158, Batman Hush 2. Absolute Flash number 1 at number 2. And position number 3 is Absolute Batman number 6. So you were right in the middle. I mean, in the kind of early onset of the Absolute Batman frenzy. It continues Absolute Martian Manhunter, Absolute Superman number 5 at the number 5 spot, Absolute Wonder Woman number 6, Ultimate Spider-Man number 15 at number 7 spot, One World Under Doom number 2, Ultimate Wolverine, and at the number 10 spot, Absolute Green Lantern number 1. So you had 3 new Absolute titles debuted the same month that you were opening. Yep. I actually remember you giving me a copy of Absolute Green Lantern number 1 early. I hope you don't get in trouble for that. But I felt very honored and special. I was like, oh shit, I get to check this out a couple of days early. But it's because you spoke so highly about it and you were like, yo, you have to check this out. And I found that pretty cool. To get a comic a little early, co-signed by you, you wanted me to get ahead of the curve. What thoughts come to mind for Absolute Green Lantern number 1?
Man, I loved that book. It was so... I still love the book, so let me not talking past tense. I love that book. But number 1 coming out blew my mind because at this point, and still, I'm trying my hardest to, read every new release that comes out, ahead of time so I know what's going on and all of that. And I remember that book being really special because, like I said, I liked Absolute Flash a lot. I still love it. Martian Manhunter, probably one of the craziest books to come out last year. That book is insane.
I think that was the moment I knew that this was not just a flash in the pan.
Yes.
This whole Absolute thing. The fact that I think I came in here looking for Absolute Martian Manhunter number 1. It was sold out.
Yep.
I think it might have been sold out at Gotham. That's when I knew it's like if a Martian Manhunter book is selling out, okay, they might have something with this Absolute stuff.
Yeah, completely agreed. And whenever Green Lantern came out, I remember reading it and going, oh shit, this is kind of dark. Like Wonder Woman has a dark tone to it. And obviously, that goes with the, what's in the book and everything. But something about the Green Lantern title was just like, okay, they're really going somewhere kind of dark with this. And I really, really like it a lot. And that's why, I saw you, kind of just, whatever you were in here for that day. And I was like, listen, man, I know you've got your podcast. I know you're like a heavy comic reader like me. Please read this book and tell me what you think about it. And I really wanted, your thoughts on it and all of that, which was super cool, which is why, I wanted you to be able to check that out. And yeah, it's massive. It's such a good book. There's so much set up. I don't want to say like I felt like it was kind of oversaturated with characters at first because I didn't. It felt so natural and good, but I was like, okay, we're like really throwing a lot in here at the beginning of this, and it really, really worked insanely well. So yeah, I love that book.
Yeah, and I'm going through the rest of this. There's 50 titles on here, and it goes into another, and it's literally all Marvel, DC. And I know that might not be, like you said, the case for you specifically. But when you think of maybe the comics that encapsulate, this first year in business, it sounds like I'm just going to roll Batman into one. Absolute Batman, the main Batman line. What are the other? Give me two more that kind of encapsulate. Hey, these are the comics that represent Black Cat Comics year one.
It's so hard to narrow it down to three, but I can do it.
Please.
Definitely Battle Beast.
Okay.
I feel like that was such a huge book here. And I'm going to say, as weird as it sounds, I think that the sequel to Beneath the Trees, Where Nobody Sees, is just, it's all encompassing of this shop,
Yeah.
I love
That's
it. Everybody here loves it. I remember when I got the trades of obviously not this volume because it just wrapped up, but the previous volume, the first original volume, it was like selling. I can't think of a good analogy. Candy to a baby, whatever that analogy is. I guess you probably can't give candy to a baby, but you know what I mean.
You're selling water to a whale. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. It was. All I had to do was show somebody the cover of the trade, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to check that out." Like that sounds amazing.
That's a great way to put it. Riverside is prime for Patrick Horvath fandom.
Yes.
Patrick Horvath is so damn talented, and I think Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees is, it just stands out, in terms of the way it looks, the story, the art, all of it is like, it's so unique and it's so good. And that's great to hear that it's on your kind of like year one Mount Rushmore.
Definitely.
Man, that's great. Dan, I want to get into a segment where I shut up for a little bit and I let other people ask the questions. It's time for the Short Box Friends and Family segment. The segment is sponsored. We've mentioned him a couple of times already, but here's another one. This segment is sponsored by Gotham City Limit Comic Shop. It's not only my local comic shop, but it's one of the best comic shops here in Jacksonville, Florida. If you're listening to this episode, you're clearly a fan of comic shop talk and hearing about great shops. Black Cat is one, and so is Gotham City Limit. They're the sponsor of this segment, which means that Ben Kingsbury sent in a voicemail for you, a question. So he gets first dibs in the honor of going first. So here is a voicemail from Ben. I'm going to play it straight from the phone. Here we go.
Hey, Daniel, what's going on, my man? It's Ben K over here at Gotham City Limit. Congrats on surviving year one. I remember mine felt like I was running a lemonade stand in a hurricane. You had a pull with us, and you actually helped me a lot. I thought I knew the comic industry from my love of the hobby. However, I quickly learned as soon as I was on the other side, I better be humble because there was a lot to learn. So do you have any specific moments like that from your first year that stand out to you? You thought you knew, but quickly from the other side, you learned there was more to meets the eye. So again, congrats on year one. You make Duval a cooler place to be. Down with the Coliseum. I'll leave you to answer. Thanks so much. And remember, Short Box Nation, always take it to the limit. Peace.
Come on. You can't do better than that. That was great.
You can't. And, it just goes to show you how cool Ben is, how cool Gotham City is. Before I even get into answering that question, like I really do just want to say the support in the comic book community in Jacksonville you can't match it anywhere. You would think like anywhere else in the entire universe, you have like, stores that are competing or whatever for business. We don't have that here. I talk to Bobby over at Cosmic on like a regular basis. Like we text each other, I was missing a couple of books a few weeks ago on a pool that somebody managed themselves on League of Comic Geeks. And I hit Ben up and was like, hey, dude, sorry to ask you this. Do you happen to have this, this, and this? And Ben was like, yes, of course. Come and grab them. And I went up to his shop and got to see him. I haven't been over there in a while because I've been busy with this. And it was so great to see Ben. And, he got those comics for me. And like, there's just none of that here. We're all so supportive of one another. And that's just amazing. It's something I feel like you just don't see in other areas. So I think that that's really cool. And yeah, it's always great to hear from Ben, and he's so supportive. And yes, my God. Yes, Ben. There's so many things that I had, that were like curveballs that were thrown at me that I had no clue. I think we kind of touched on some, just you think comics and you get into titles and stuff like that. And you got your huge heavy hitters. You have your Batman, your Amazing Spider-Man, your Uncanny X-Men, things like that are just such big books. And it just depends on where you are, because like I said, Batman, I can't keep enough on the shelf. I order, 50 copies of Amazing Spider-Man, and I'm hung with like 25. What is that? Everybody reads Spider-Man. That's the weirdest thing. Same thing with Uncanny X-Men. I thought when I opened the shop, okay, this is a very popular title. I should be ordering, at least enough for an incentive cover on these. No, absolutely not. I have like 2 on pull list. It's crazy. But then you go to something like the Twilight Zone anthology book or Hello Darkness or something like that, and I can't keep like the 30 that I have on the shelf release date. Damn. That's crazy. I had no idea, and there was no way to know this stuff until I got into it and did it and understood, my customer base out here. But I had no idea that indie would sell as hard as it does. And I know right this second, we're in a huge indie speculation bubble. So that doesn't help either. But just, reverting back to over the last year, that indie would sell so well. And I'll say this to really answer Ben's question. The thing that threw me the most, and I think you have a little bit, we have like a little bit personal experience with this. I put out a Halloween anthology where I grabbed, I can't remember how many it was, 30 something local creators. Some of them teamed up, wrote and somebody else illustrated. Some of them did it themselves, whatever. But we did 1-page kind of horror stories in a Halloween anthology that was kind of based around Jacksonville, all local creators. And I didn't know where to go with that. I was like, okay, I know my price point. I know what we're going to do to sell these things. I didn't know how many to order, and I was, everything was done locally. They were printed locally, by someone local, and all of that. And I was like, okay, I think we're good at 100. Like, I don't want to be hung with a million of these things. I think 100 might be safe. Again, gone. Like, I couldn't keep a single copy for the shop. I felt bad because I wrote a story in one and I wanted to keep one myself. And I was like, no, people want this book. Let me sell my copy too. So,
that's impressive. A local comic anthology about Jax selling over 100 copies. That's damn impressive.
Yeah, local to the shop. We released it on Halloween Day. We had a big party here. We had food trucks. We had acoustic bands play inside and all that, but gone instantly. So I think that was probably one of my biggest curves. I had no clue. I thought, great, we'll order 100 copies of these things. I'll probably sell like 25 or 30 release day. And then slowly, maybe people will check it out here and there, and we'll have a couple of copies for the next year or so. Not at all.
It kind of definitely speaks to, I think, a trait that makes for a good comic shop owner is the ability to kind of have their finger on the pulse, but also have really good taste. Not just like personal taste, but I think, like you said, being able to get a feel for like your audience, the people that have pulls, what will sell. And I think that comes with a lot of trial and error and time.
Definitely.
Let me ask, what do you think is the second, what's another important trait that you think a shop owner needs to have to be successful in business? If we say, like taste and being able to order the right amounts and like it kind of being like a fortune teller, what's another trait that you think is important to have?
I don't know if this answers the question. Hopefully it does. And again, like we kind of touched on this before a little bit, but really taking care of your customers, and I've learned that through, just how I want to be treated and years of customer service as well. But if you walk into a shop and they don't have a book you're looking for, whether you have a pool or not, whether it's your first time in there, whether you pool at some other shop or, you just came in here because they happen to be out of that issue or whatever it is, you're looking for someone to take care of you. So you're really looking for someone, it's kind of on the owner or the worker at that point where it's like, hey, I'm looking for this. Like, what can you do to take care of me? So a lot of times, I've done whatever I could to take care of that customer. If like we kind of touched on before, the last thing you want to do is say, I don't have it right now. Can you come back in a week for it or whatever? Yeah. But sometimes you have to do that. And sometimes you have to say like, hey, listen, I know this sucks. It's completely sold out. I've got a copy on the way for you. I guarantee you it will be here whenever you show back up, whatever. I feel like that's helped a lot. I feel like, doing things like, kind of like outside of your means to help that customer really helps a lot. If I've had to at some point, maybe hop on like Midtown or something and grab something that, Lunar was completely sold out of, and then pay the cover price plus shipping, for that customer, to retain their business or something. Wow. Then that's something that I'll gladly do.
So it sounds like you're saying problem solving and being able to go above and beyond at times, whereas like maybe you are taking a short-term loss, like you were saying, like, hey, I'll go ahead and eat the shipping fee.
Yep.
But it means that maybe they become a pull customer. I'm showing them that they can, I'm willing to go above and beyond. And I think that's things that your normal customer doesn't quite see. We're not, even maybe my speaking personally, we're not completely aware of all the things you do behind the scenes. All we know is like, hey, my book better be in this month, Yeah. I hope they've got, another copy of Nectar #1, which I should have listened to Ben. Ben, I'm sorry. Please stop yelling at me. I try to listen.
That's a rough one.
Which, if you don't mind, I want to go on a tangent really quick because, I'm just thinking about how, Dan, I mean, you really chose such a interesting time to open a shop. Like maybe the best time to open a shop, right? Like the Absolute universe is crushing it, right? Like Marvel has got, the ultimate stuff going on. Indie comics, like you said, are having an insane moment right now where this speculator attention, whether for good or worse, is bringing a lot of hype, a lot of business through the door. I guess how do you feel about, the speculator energy and attention on like some of these indie books? I mean, if we're looking at just this year, in the last couple of weeks, image #1's like Nectar, Narco this week was another sellout. The week before was White Sky. The week before that was Dork. I'm sure there's a few more I'm missing, but those are the ones that come to mind just recently. What is your perspective as a shop owner? Like you see that, I'm sure there's a part of you that's like, hey, that's money walking to the door. I'm flying these books off the shelf. But then you also mentioned how that can be tricky with ordering. I guess, do you have any fear of that being like we're in another 90s bubble? Like this isn't sustainable? Like, I guess, how do you see it?
I think that I'm not going to lie. I always think it's good. The more eyes on comics or specific comics or whatever, the better. I want to say that it feels to me like it has kind of started or emerged again because the last time we were in this kind of like speculation bubble was from my perspective was when Ice Cream Man #1 was coming out, Department of Truth, Something is Killing the Children, back like a few years ago when all of that stuff was kind of popping off. And I feel like we're kind of right back there. Now, this is like a little bit different because that stuff had like kind of organic heat to it where I don't feel like, at least as far as I recall, that stuff like selling out on day one, and commanding these huge price hikes. But I think that stuff like Absolute Batman coming out, being very popular on social media with people who aren't typical comic book collectors, TikTok and stuff like that, getting into Absolute Batman. I get a lot of people who walk in the door and go, hey, I'm hearing about Absolute Batman. Do you have Absolute Batman? I saw it on TikTok or whatever. And I'm like,
wow.
Yes,
okay,
we
I
do.
didn't think about that.
And I point them over to the trade or a single issue and stuff like that. So I think that a lot of those people are maybe kind of getting heavy into comics and they're maybe perpetuating a little bit of this speculation that's going on right now. Or maybe, just us like tried and true collectors are like hungry for more stuff to kind of blow up, and I guess maybe that's causing it.
I guess I'm curious if you're seeing, these new fans come in and they're like, hey, I saw the hype on this, on which, you know, you bring up a really good point about social media being a catalyst, like a fire starter for some of these books. And then also just the advantage for you too, where, you know, that's kind of free marketing. If something catches on in social media, that's driving business to you too. But oh man, I had it, and I just lost it. Oh my God! All right, we'll have to get back to that. Man, that felt like a really good conversation. Where was I going with that? You were bringing up indies, but okay, that's where I was going at. Sorry for that. Is it sustainable though? Like people are coming in, scooping up Narco #1. How many of them are you finding? With these spec books, these hot books, how many people are returning for issue 2, issue 5, or until the, you know, to the series ends? Is it still too early to identify that? Or, you know, that's what I'm curious is like, is it sustainable in that regard? Are we building readers and like, you know, real fans, or are we just building collectors that are trying to get in on the, you know, the next big thing?
I think it's a good mix of both, to tell you the truth. I think that, you know, just from what I see here, you do have those random walk-ins of people you've never seen before, you know, or people calling, you know, and asking for Dork #1 or Nectar #1 and stuff like that. But then I've got all my pool customers, you know, who want it as well. So I think it's a nice mix of people who, you know, maybe have a little bit of FOMO but want to check something out, or, you know, maybe really want to help kind of feed the speculation into something, you know. A lot of times we're talking about very, very low print runs on these things. Shops are ordering, you know, with the exception of somewhere like, you know, some of the really big shops, a lot of these places are not ordering any, or they're ordering like 2 or 3 copies of Nectar #1, you know, and then they have, you know, probably pool customers who heard about it a week ahead of time, who went ahead and asked for it and stuff like that. And then that doesn't leave any for the people, you know, walking in off the street, which was kind of the case here. I didn't really have any for people coming in. So I don't know. I think it's both. I think that there are probably people who grab it, turn around and sell it for a quick profit, who aren't really involved in comics. And then there's those who want to hang on to it. But yeah, it's pretty soon to tell.
I think there's one element that we could speak to on this topic, but I'm going to let our next guest toss up the topic in this next conversation point, because I think it's timely to what we're talking about. This next voicemail comes from our mutual friend, good guy here, Mr. Warren Evans.
Oh, yeah.
He went ahead and submitted a voicemail for you, too. Let's play it.
Yo, Botter, it's your boy Warren, a.k.a. Bart of Darkness, a.k.a. the host of Simpsons is Greater Than. You know, I had to take a moment to plug myself in this voicemail, but I also wanted to submit a question for Daniel, and that question is, what do you think comic book shops say about the importance of physical media? I mean, you see a lot of people these days, you know, they want to own real books. They want to own real music, whether it be records, CDs, tapes. They want to have a little piece of what they consume. And what do you think it means that stuff is so important to people in this era, even when we have all this stuff at our fingertips? Thanks. I would love to hear your thoughts. Peace.
Yo, big shout out to Warren. All right, not only is he the Bart of Darkness on Instagram, not only is he the co-host of Simpsons is Greater Than podcast, but he is your shop neighbor. All right, he's right here on the strip, one of the managers of the best record shop here in Jax, Tiger Records. So you get to see him how often do you see Warren?
Oh man, I get to see Warren a few times a week.
Nah, that's cool.
Warren is awesome.
Yeah, he's great.
And let me just say again, dude, before I even get into the question, you are so good at like getting the right people to ask the right questions on this thing.
It is my favorite.
I'm surprised like both times now. I'm like, okay, cool.
I don't get to call in a lot of favors. Maybe I do. Depends on who you ask. But when I love doing this segment, finding people that are close to you, that know you, that will ask good questions. And it just made sense considering, like I said, you probably see Warren, like you said, maybe, you know, at least once every week.
Yep.
And we've had discussions about, you know, him being the biggest Simpsons fan and collector I know.
Definitely.
So clearly, you know, he's got, you know, these thoughts and ideas about physical media. And I think that was one of the missing, something we haven't discussed yet is the love of physical media and what seems to be like a resurgence in a rabid fan base for it in today's day and age. He mentioned it, but the LA Times just wrote an article about the rise of physical media, or the re-rise. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but just how popular physical media is with younger generation, the Gen Z crowd. Blu-rays are selling big again. Vinyl has had a resurgence, for the last 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, how do you feel about how much of that resurgence are you seeing as a driving force for business here?
Huge. That is so big because there are, like you said, like it's kind of like a generational thing. Of course, I think at this point, I don't know about you, I'm close enough to being called an old head. So you're not there yet, but
I'll be 37 this May. If I'm not an old head officially by age, I'm definitely there in spirit. So,
right. But we're kind of that generation, at least I think, I don't know, I'm called a millennial and I don't know exactly where you are, but we grew up with physical media. We grew up going to the comic book store, having a pool, picking up books. I was never a huge record collector. I do have like a nice, okay collection now, but CDs, huge. I have as many CDs as I do comics. It's insane. And we grew up in that time where that stuff was important to us and all of that. But at the same time, once we hit like our, for me, like, teen years, for you, probably like a little bit before that, you were able to go online and download music and burn yourself a CD or whatever, or I'm not going to say you pirated any movies, but if you did,
I'll say it. Pirate Bay for life, baby. Bear share. I should have that tatted on me. But I mean, that was, I think, speaking to what you're talking about in terms of like our youth and being a millennial. It's like, but we did get to, we are the internet age where we got to see the internet become, grow into all parts of our, it wasn't just a niche thing, right?
Yep.
Like, the first computer I ever saw was in like typing class, and it blew me away. And it was years before my family got our first computer. But we were of the age of like MySpace, Facebook, like the internet becoming way more convenient, more consumer friendly. I mean, we were there for the iPod, all this stuff. So it's interesting, I guess, for me to see. I see these headlines, I see the anecdotes, and you're backing it up by saying, yeah, like, this thing of wanting physical media again, even though, this younger generation has grown up, I think, exclusively with like the entire catalog of whatever musician at their fingertips. They can read comics digitally. So it's interesting, I guess, to see them like still want to seek out and buy, physical media.
I think that nothing is ever going to replace as hard as we try, or as hard as, I don't know, manufacturers or whatever you want to call it, companies try, to take that stuff and go a different way with it. Nothing's ever going to replace having something cool in your hands, even if it's, something as simple as like a digital download. I don't know if they still do that, but like the newest Taylor Swift record or something, like, of course it's cool to have that and, play it through your phone in your car or whatever, through your Bluetooth. But going to a record shop and owning that and opening it up, opening up the jacket and looking through it and everything, there's something about that. Just like in comics, you can read them digitally. I read some comics digitally as well. And I'm happy that option is there. But my enjoyment of reading a comic book that's in my hands skyrockets. It's so much more than reading something digital. I'm happy to have both options, but it's almost just like going to the movie theater to see a movie versus watching it at home in your living room.
Sure.
I'm always going to like the movie a lot more and have a way better experience when I sit in a quiet, dark theater, versus sitting at home with the distraction of my phone or something.
Yeah, I to chime in on that, convenience is awesome. I love being able to access the World Wide Web on my phone and have access to all the information in the world, but nothing beats a good experience. Yep. It's like, that's what's so great about setting up a pull list, going into a shop, like finding something that you didn't originally have the intention for. I think when it comes to like consuming things digitally, you almost, like you're going into it with a mission and one thing, and being able to go into a physical space and look for comics or records, like you kind of open up the opportunity to come across something new, which I think I want to mention. Not only do you sell comics and new books, and you've got great back issues, you've got a whole little section dedicated to Blu-rays, which you got like manga in there. You've got like trades. How much percentage of sales does like Blu-rays make up? Just like roughly, like do Blu-rays do pretty good for you?
They do pretty good. I would say, obviously this is a dedicated comic book store, and that's just kind of like a little added thing. And that probably spills over from my years of working at Blockbuster. I like to be surrounded by movies and stuff as well. But it's almost just like a cool little added benefit for the people in this neighborhood. I do have some people that exclusively come in and like to grab a few movies here and there. I keep the prices as cheap as I can, so that way they can come in and grab like a Blu-ray that's still, sometimes they're still sealed or whatever, and it's only $2.50. So to get it at that price point is pretty cool for some people. And I don't know, I would say maybe 10%. It's not huge. This is definitely, more of a comic book spot, but to have that option and have something else cool to look at and everything, I think people really enjoy that. So
yeah. All right. Well, big shout out to Warren for that question.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. That's amazing.
All right. I want to get into our next question. And I think you'll appreciate this voicemail. I won't even ruin the surprise. I'm just going to press play and then we'll talk about him after. Here
Scared
we go.
now.
Hey, Short Box Nation. This is Nick Wagner from Black Hive Tattoo. I just wanted to put in a softball question that I still am interested in hear the answer. For Daniel at Black Cat Comics, how does it feel to have spent so much of your life like working for a larger corporation and then rolling the dice on your dream and having so much success in the first year? Me personally, I love that we have a comic shop in Riverside again, especially so close to my shop, as you know. But I feel like with Black Cat on one side of the river and Gotham on the other side of the river, it's like we got everybody that's a true comic lover covered. And I just want to know, like, how excited are you that this is taken off the way that it has? I can't wait to see what you do next. I know you got some big events coming up, and I'll probably see you next week. Bye.
Hell yeah. Big shout out to Nick Wagner, tattoo artist extraordinaire, former comic shop owner. We mentioned his shop as well. RIP to the great Black Hive Comics. And a huge comic nerd and short box family. First, I always got to give him credit for being the first sponsor of the short box ever, as well as the first Patreon subscriber as well. Nick is
that sounds just like Nick.
Yeah, Nick is a day one fan, and if he fucks with you, he really fucks with you.
He is supportive.
So it's great to hear that he loves the shop as much as he does. Granted, it's a 5-minute walk for him, so I can see why. But back to his question, which I think I have talked so much I kind of forgot the question. But I think he was asking about that moment. I guess he mentioned that you worked for a bigger corporation and then you rolled the dice, gambled on fulfilling your dream of doing a comic shop. What was that moment like? Like going from working for someone else, a company, having a day job, to making this like your full-time thing?
So here's the history with that. So as I mentioned a few times, I worked for Blockbuster for a bit. Obviously that closed down, and I don't remember what year, 2008, 2009, something like that. They kind of pulled out of Jax and then completely went out of business. But I didn't know what to do at that point because I wasn't anywhere near prepared to open my own shop. I had kind of toyed with thinking maybe I'll open like a little coffee shop or something and slowly integrate comic books into that. I feel like that was kind of a safe bet at the time. But then we hit that big like recession. So it wasn't like a smart idea at the time to do that. So like he said, working for a bigger corporation, I went to Publix and got a job there. And I quickly became like a bakery manager. And that's what I was for like the last 18 years before I opened the shop. So I worked at Publix for a long time and I have nothing to say about that, good or bad. It was a job.
But you also have worked at these jobs that I'm like, I am, excuse the pun, I'm seeing the perfect recipe for being
Right.
the type of shop owner you are, like the blockbuster knowledge and, that environment. A bakery shop owner, I feel like is probably must be very nice to work around like good smelling cakes and pastries.
It was nice.
But, yeah, so I guess what was the turning point? Like, fuck it, you threw down your apron and you were like, I'm a comic shop owner for life.
So this was kind of my plan, and this is like a huge peek behind the curtain, but I've told plenty of people this, so it's whatever. But like I said, I'm 42. My original plan was to tough it out until I was 45. So that's what I wanted to do. I was like, when I'm 45, I feel like that is a good age to pull out of the career that I've been in. I'll feel mature enough, old enough, whatever, to own my own business and all of that. So that's what I was working towards. It's not that anything happened, because nothing happened at Publix. It was fine there. Everything was fine. I just, years and years of doing it. And I said, I don't know, I think I'm ready. And this was kind of where, that decision, that turning point happened for me. I originally thought, my plans were very, very big for this place. And when I say very big, I wanted this to be a coffee shop / comic book store, and then sell CDs also. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted
to absorb Bold Bean and Tiger Records.
But not here.
Ambitious.
Not here.
Yeah.
But, I was looking at like a 3,000 square foot spot.
Oh, wow.
And I was not planning on opening anywhere near here. I thought either, towards San Marco or the beaches or something like that. So really, and this, I guess, kind of maybe goes into a little bit of like Warren shout out too. But, James has been a friend of mine for a long time. I've known James since I was a teenager, James Saboni, who owns Tiger Records, and, had talked to James, kind of like, in that sense, like recently about, my plans, about saying, all right, when I'm like around 45, I plan on doing this and everything. And, kind of get like, just talking to him a little bit about opening a business and getting some information from him. So I want to say we talked, and then about 2 months later, James texted me and he goes, hey dude, I know this is like kind of crazy and like off the, just kind of out of nowhere, but there's a spot open right next to me. It's like a couple of doors down. I think that you would do really well out here. I think you should just like come over and check it out. Like I'll meet you and you can come check it out. And I was like, well, I'm not anywhere near, I'm still like 4 years out at that point of doing that. So, but I was like, I trust James. He's a really smart guy, really good business guy. And, I'll come over and check it out, just kind of see what he's talking about. So I met up with James over at Tiger. We walked over here, kind of peeked through the window, we couldn't get inside. The lights were off, whatever. And I was just like, damn, this place looks cool. And this is such a cool block. And it's right next to James. And I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and call the realtor and just see just toy with the idea and see what it's like. And that was just like perpetual motion. Like you couldn't stop after that.
Wow.
Like the second that I heard, what they were asking and where my collection was and all of that and where I was in terms of my career and how I felt like at that point, like, not that I was coasting, but I didn't have any more of a future there. I did everything that I wanted to do at Publix, and I'm like a goal-orientated person. So to know that I'm just kind of there, like wasting 4 more years getting paid, I was like, there's no point in doing this. And while that was, a huge decision and it could have turned out very, very badly, luckily it turned out really, really good and everything's fine. But yeah, that was the point where I took this risk, and I can't lie. Like all of it is because of James, the owner of Tiger Records. So he really pushed me in that direction and really was like, dude, just do it. Like, it'll be awesome. That was kind of his attitude. And I was like, you know what? You're right, man. Like I am going to do it. And it will be awesome.
It will be awesome.
And he was right. So
I can hear him say that. And I know he said it in a very believable way.
Yep.
Man, I don't want to discredit any of the hard work you've put behind this. You mentioned, being goal oriented. I know the blood, sweat, and tears you put into this place, but much like all the great business stories, there is a lot of luck. And I think timing too, like luck, locate, they say location. You can ask for a better location. Timing, I think, in terms of also like, this being open at the right time, being, the right price for you. I mean, I feel like this is a place that just keeps going up and up. Mm-hmm. But also, like I said, the timing in the industry, the absolute stuff, the resurgence of physical media, comic books and the speculate. I think all of that attributes to a really interesting, like all these different recipes that goes into Black Cat. Yeah, big shout out to Nick Wagner for that. And I guess it must feel great. I mean, you tell me, but how does it feel every morning to wake up to know, like, I'm going to go open the doors to my comic shop and I'm going to go sell some comics?
There's nothing cooler than that. Like, that is the greatest thing in the entire world. There hasn't been a single day yet, where I dreaded, wanting to come in here. I enjoy it so much. Even if I just want to come in and sit around and read comic books, I can. I'll get behind on my work, of course. But, I could theoretically just come in, read some new books and have a good time. I'm always surrounded by such amazing art and then such cool people. The amount of, and I think this is a staple in comic book stores. You've probably seen it throughout, all these years you've been into comics. But one of the coolest things about comics and probably record stores and stuff like that is you have guys or girls who just come in and hang out and just want to talk to you for hours about the stuff they're interested in. And that's something, I didn't experience as much in the other jobs that I had done, working at Blockbuster or something like that. Everything was very transactional. Working at Publix, kind of behind the scenes, again, like very transactional and stuff like that. And you would develop relationships and you would have customers you could talk to and everything. But this is a whole nother level, speaking, to circle back around to Nick. Nick is a fountain of knowledge. Like, when it comes to comics, he knows so much about comics. The dude ran a comic book store.
Exactly.
He's a lifelong collector and he knows his shit. Like, he's a smart guy, a great business guy as well. And, having Nick, walk in here a few times a week whenever he goes to grab his coffee at Bold Bean and he just wants to kind of shoot the shit or talk about some cool comics that are coming out or some experience that he has, from the past in his own comic shop is insane. Like, it's so cool.
You've got a really good support group. And speaking of Nick Wagner, I think it's time that we reward the people who have been listening this long to the podcast.
Yes.
And tell them about a really fucking awesome, excuse my language. I mean, this is a podcast where I can curse all I want, but that was maybe a little egregious. A really great giveaway. Like, it's so good, I had to curse, which I need to grab that book right now. Do you remember? Oh, here it is right here. Okay, check this out. We're going to be doing a giveaway for this custom, hopefully the glare isn't too bad, but this custom 1-of-1 sketch cover done by Nick Wagner. All right, it's on a blank cover of Absolute Batman #1. Like I said, Nick Wagner is a tattoo artist extraordinaire. I don't even like calling him just a tattoo artist because he's so an artist himself. So he took time out of his very busy schedule to do this amazing sketch cover of on this Absolute Batman #1 blank cover. It's a badass image of Batman for my audio listeners. There will be an Instagram post where I'm going to post this and all the official giveaway details. But this thing, I'm sure it'll show up on video nice, but Dan can tell you it's even more amazing in person. So you might be the lucky winner to admire this in person. This thing it's got pencil work. He said that he also did some color penciling on this. There is ink as well on this. He also used some acrylic paint, brushes. It's like every single art tool at his disposal. Nick Wagner put it on this cover. And like I said, I'll post this on Instagram, but the rules will be very simple. You're going to want to like this post. You're going to want to make sure that you're following the Shortbox Pod. You're going to make sure you want to follow Black Cat Comics as well as Black Hive Tattoo. And I want you to tell me in the comment section, what's been your favorite issue of Absolute Batman? I think issue 7, it's up to issue 17 at this point or something like
17
that.
17 just came out.
Yeah.
18 this Wednesday.
There we go. So tell me what's your favorite issue of Absolute Batman? We'll do a raffle style. I'll pick one winner. If you live here in Jax, I will drop this off and leave this here at Black Cat so you can come pick it up in person. Or if you live somewhere else outside of Jax, I'll mail it to you personally. But we'll run this contest for the month of March. I'll pick a winner at the end of the month. And once again, I'm telling you, it's pretty amazing because Nick Wagner has slowly, I think, speaking about his involvement with the shop, I think it's safe to say that you inspired him, Black Cat has inspired him to do more comic-centric work. This is actually not even the first custom sketch cover that he's done. He's done a couple for you, actually, right?
That's such an amazing thing to give Nick like another shout out. like you said, he's so good with like mixed media. He's
insane.
He's doing like just all kind of crazy stuff on the
I'm
covers
like,
of
you-
these books.
You draw on people's bodies professionally. I should not be surprised anymore, but goddamn.
But I am, yeah, every single time. So just like to go back a little bit, and for anybody who hasn't been into the shop, we're like decorated with local art. One of the big things that I like to do here is, we've got these blank sketch covers. Anytime a local artist walks in, I can't fast enough. I'm like, hey, is there any chance you do a blank for the store? And
That's dope.
almost everybody is like, yes, dude, of course. And then they turn it in right away. But there's such amazing artwork throughout the store, blank sketch covers. So Nick was one of the first ones. And he did a Battle Beast cover that is,
it's the most rock. It's the most heavy metal shit ever. It's Battle Beast chewing on one of the tentacles of Cthulhu. It's insane.
Insane doesn't even begin to describe it. It is the most insane thing you've ever seen. It's so sick. And Nick did. I don't know. I can't give enough props to Nick for that. It's so amazing. He did a little breakdown Instagram post where he kind of showed the process, and it blew my mind. But Nick has done that. He's done Spider-Man. He's done a Street Sharks cover that is again just if I had room on my arms, that would be a half sleeve for me. It's so insane. But Nick is amazing, and this thing.
It's incredible.
The perspective of Batman there will just blow your mind. The way that boot's coming down, it just looks like it's going to crush your face. So it's so good.
It is awesome. And like I said, we'll do a giveaway for that. There'll be a separate post on the Shortbox Instagram. Be on the lookout for that. Big shout outs to Nick Wagner. You brought up indie artist, and I for some reason the voicemail isn't loading here, but I did get a question submitted from Tony Aopi, our buddy, our pal Tony Aopi, a super talented indie comic creator himself, one of the founders of one of my favorite local comic events, DCAS, Duval Comic and Zine Fest. He sent in a voicemail, but one of his questions, which I want to use here, is he wanted to know, do you remember the first comic that you ever got? And is there a holy grail that you're still on the hunt for?
God, that's a hard question. I want to say the first comic I ever got was Robin #1 out of that 5-part miniseries. That's what I think it was. But I think around the time I was getting as much as I could, which was probably 3 to 4 comics a week. So, I was really obsessed with that Robin miniseries. So I want to say it was that. Holy Grail, that is such a hard question.
Have you come across a lot of, because well, behind us is your wall of books, and there's some great, you got a couple of really good slabbed ones, a couple of old school ones, a lot of good raw comics. But I will say your mix of back issues and, you've got a good range of you'll have some key issues, first appearances, really interesting off the beaten path comics. What are some of the most, I guess, holy grail type comics that you've come across or had in possession or sold?
For me, my biggest holy grail is all the Mike Allred Madman stuff. I won't lie. It's not super expensive or hard to find, but it's for me, and I'm sure that everyone who collects comics has felt this way. There's a comic that you get, no matter what it is, no matter who illustrated it or whatever, that you're just holy shit, this is an actual masterpiece work of art that I'm holding in my hands. And that's how I feel whenever I look at any of Mike Allred's comics. He is my favorite artist of all time. Just amazing stuff, and such a cool guy. I feel the same way with Bill Sienkiewicz's stuff. That 2-part Demon Bear saga that he did on New Mutants is one of the most beautiful things and all of art altogether, not just comics. And it's so insane. So, the first time looking at some of that stuff, I would say those were holy grails for me. I think that, just like every other good fanboy, Amazing Spider-Man 129. When I got my first copy of that, my heart stopped for a minute.
Wait, Amazing Spider-Man 129, that is?
First Punisher.
First Punisher, okay.
Yeah. And, it just, I was I can't believe I'm holding this book. Now, I've had a few copies of that, and I've, had more expensive books and rarer books and all of that. But I think that was the first time I ever felt this is, I satisfied getting the book that I cared the most about. Just that cover's so amazing. It's such a well executed book, and Amazing Spider-Man being one of my favorite things of all time. But I don't know, as far as like grails now, it's so hard to tell because so many books pass through my hands, and I don't know, I feel like I love like all of them. Like they're all so good.
What's the last book that you bought, maybe a collection or that came through here that you were like, no, this goes in the personal box for Dan. This is for me. I cannot sell this.
I'm going to feel so bad saying this. This is going to feel terrible, but a lady came in with a collection a few months back. Probably 6 or 7 months back, 6, 7 months back. And it had a lot of the Mirage Turtle stuff in it. And that stuff, is just stuff that I've never really, I've seen it like conventions behind people or whatever. It's not stuff I've held in my hands really. And as I was pricing out the collection, I was like, oh, I can't afford this. There's no way in hell. Ended up finding a way to make it work, and it did. And once I had that Turtles #1 and #2 and
Holy
3
shit.
in my hands, and then the Raphael special and stuff, mini series and all of that, I was just like, I'm sure at some point these are going to come to the shop, but right now they're at home on a wall in my comic book room, and they're not moving. So
yeah, I love the honesty, Dan. Look, more power to you. I used to work at Universal Superheroes for a short little stint, and I think like any good young, college age teenage kid working at a shop, I made the foolish decision. It was smart at the time to work for store credit because I was like, I'm going to spend this money on comics anyway. Might as well get the store credit and just save myself the hassle. And I think that is why I had never really pursued trying to open my own shop, is I'd be so terrible at it. I would be the worst. I would be consuming my own product. And they say you should not do that. But Dan, I want to ask, talking about some of the pull list. Well, not just your pull list, but just the comics, today's comics. What do you think is what is a sleeper title right now? A new title, a current title that you think not enough people have on their pull list, that you think, man, more people should be reading this because it's great.
I think, and I can only speak here, personally, a lot of people are on stuff like Space Ghost and stuff like that. That's really good. And this might sound kind of left field to you. I don't know how you feel about these books in particular. I thought for years and years that Dynamite was just putting out like, covers, and that was it. There's no content in the stories inside the book and stuff like that. And actually, me and a friend tried to do a podcast. We definitely did not make it anywhere as long as this, which this is the comic book podcast.
You're too kind, Dan. You're too kind. The check is in the mail.
Right. We would kind of like break down like a new #1 comic whenever we did our podcast. And this is, years ago, it's been done for a while, but we would do like a randomized wheel, to choose like a #1 that was coming out that week. And a few times a Dynamite book ended up on the list. And, that first time, I can't remember exactly what book it was right now. It might've been Thundercats, but we did it and we read the book, and I was like, what the hell, man? This is like a 10 out of 10 book. Like, what, are you kidding me? Like, I had no clue whatsoever. And I think that, a lot of these like smaller publishers, of course, Marvel and DC Image, like they're putting out really, really cool stuff. And I could, praise any one of those books or publishers. Dynamite really puts a lot of care and a lot of thought into what they put out, into the creative teams. Yeah. People like David Pepose and Sue Lee, who are working on some of those books, are like, you don't hear those names enough, and they're like up here. They're like so insane.
I'm so glad you brought up the Space Ghost series, because I still collect. I'm a few issues behind, but that is one that's on my pull because it is solid. Yep. And I had an opportunity to talk to David Pepose, who's writing not only Space Ghost, but he's also writing like Speed Racer, and some other titles too. But I knew after talking to him and how passionate he talked about Space Ghost and how serious he was, this wasn't just like another paycheck. I think it shows in the work. The art too by Jonathan Lau, like exceeded my expectations. Yeah, Dynamite, I think. you see how many IPs they have and how, they're Thundercats, Powerpuff Girls, Speed. I don't know if they have Speed Racer, but the Disney villain arc. I think it's easy to dismiss it like, oh, okay, like, it's a cash grab.
Yep.
But no, when you look at like, also, Thundercats is written by Declan Shelby. Yeah. Jason Aaron was writing. I think he was doing something for Thundercats. I think now he's doing Thundar. They do attract really good talent and a lot of like talent that hasn't quite like reached that level just yet. That's a good answer. What is your personal favorite comic that comes out every month, like a weekly comic or new comic?
That's insanely hard. I don't even know how I'd answer that. I would say, I'm going to give the most typical comic book answer in 2026 and say Absolute Batman is really, it's really worth the hype. Like if for some reason you're like watching or listening to this podcast with Botter and you don't pull Absolute Batman, like just stop and pull Absolute Batman. Whatever your shop is, I don't care. I don't care if it's here or somewhere else. Pull Absolute Batman. It's so ridiculous and so good. But I would say, personally, outside of Absolute Batman, some of these anthologies that are coming out are so ridiculous. The resurgence of the EC stuff through Ani, like Cruel Universe and stuff like that is so good. The Twilight Zone book from ID Dark or
IDW Dark,
is it like blows my mind. It's so good, and they're doing writer artist. I can't think of the word, but like where they do both, on those books right now, and they're so good. Hello Darkness from Boom Studios, so good. So like these like kind of like horror sci-fi anthologies and stuff that are coming out right now are like peak, like they're ridiculous.
That's awesome. I do want to co-sign. One, it's great that you're shining a spotlight on indie creators, some of these smaller publishers. Big shout outs to IDW, obviously a sponsor of the show because they make great comics. But I want to go ahead and back you up on the obvious ass statement you made, which is Absolute Batman being so good. And this is coming from someone that has recently caught up. I am quick to, if there's too much hype around something and the general consensus is, hey, it's great, then I will take my time. I actually will put it to the side because I know it'll be good, and that means I could focus on maybe some other things that need the attention. I recently decided to play catch up with Absolute Batman, and this is someone that did not read past issue 5, so I was behind by months. But I sat down one day and caught up with all of the main issues as well as like the special and the annual, and I arrived at the consensus of, it lives up to the hype, and it's not, to me, it's groundbreaking in the sense of how much attention it has, how much it sells. I think it is not groundbreaking story per se. I think there's a lot of other Batman Elseworlds that are comparable, but nothing is quite as hype as this. And I gotta give Scott Snyder and Nick Dragata credit that they are going for the gusto. They are going for, they're trying to hit beyond the fence, and I think they're delivering with some of just how insane the story arc is going. The art is, I feel like Nick Dragata is at his best. It just feels like they've injected, like pure venom, right? Like Bane's venom into this book, and it really shows. And I respect the hell out of just some of the swings they're taking, the reinterpretations of the characters and how they're weaving this world together. It lives up to the hype.
And it feels like there's it's the perfect creative team. You put those two together. And it's almost insane.
And it feels like it's the perfect comic for this time. And I can't quite articulate why, but there's a vibe to it that I think resonates with our culture today. And I know that was intentional, having talked to Scott Snyder and him saying like, I really wanted to make this a book for my sons and my kids. It's something very timely about it. But anyways, Dan, I think we have, this has been a great conversation, and I want to end it on a positive and maybe some I don't know, some inspiration for the aspiring comic shop owner out there, maybe someone that wants to take the same leap of faith that you did and has dreams of owning their own comic shop. I guess, do you have any words of wisdom for aspiring comic shop owners or people who want to own their own shop? Is there anything that maybe you would have done different when you first started, or maybe is there a piece of advice that you wish you would have gotten like earlier that you can share?
Like you said before, I think I've been insanely lucky and everything has just kind of fallen into place, which has been so cool. And knock on wood, I hope that doesn't end or, reverse or anything like that. But I would say for aspiring comic shop owners, I'm not going to say the same thing that has been said to me a million times, which is like, do it for the love of comics, not for the money. Like, I think that that's kind of obvious at this point. I don't think that too many people think that they're going to be like a millionaire by running a comic shop. I think that people know that by this point. But, do it for your community. Do it for the community that you're serving. Do it for the people that you're serving. Do it because you want to take care of them and you want to perpetuate comic books moving forward, and you want, to have a lot of times, and I don't know, this might sound stupid, I don't know, but it really feels good whenever, mom and dad come in with their little kid or something and they're like, hey, he really likes Sonic. Can you show him some Sonic comics? And then I do. And then they're like, can we set up to like pick this up every time it comes out? And I'm just like, yes. And then I see that, that family every month or whatever. And that's kind of like something that feels really, really good every time, because I feel like, yeah, sure, that kid might have the same trajectory as like me or you. They might be like really into comics their whole life, or they might be really into comics for 2 years and then get out of them and then come back to it when they're 30 or whatever. But that's cool. And that's perpetuating the comic book culture and that's perpetuating comic book creators and all of that. A lot of people do this because they're really into the art. A lot of times I end up with people I have no idea, draw really well, or they write comics. And I'm like, what? You've been, a pool customer here for like 6 months. And I didn't know you like have like 10 scripts, like, are ready to go or whatever, or you illustrate or something. And that's always really cool. So I think, really know what you're doing it for, do it for the community, and do it to perpetuate comic book culture that needs to stay around. And physical media is important, especially in comics. So I don't know. I would say that's the best advice I could give. Do it for, something like that, a reason. You're obviously not going to be rich. I can say that all day. Everybody says that all day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I thought of one last question for you. What does the future of Black Cat Comics look like? It sounded, Nick hinted in his voicemail, you've got some events coming up. What can people expect from Black Cat Comics this year?
So last year was insane. It was the coolest ride of my life, and I loved it. And I think, moving forward, I'm going to blow that out of the water. Like I want to do as much with the local community as I can. So now, instead of just publishing like the one Halloween anthology, like we're going to try to be doing like a quarterly book that comes out, that's from local creators that's sold here exclusively at Black Cat. I'm really, really excited about that. I'm really excited about some of the people I've lined up to come do like in-store signings and stuff like that. Really excited about some local creators I have coming up, releasing their books here in store. You mentioned Tony Aopi, and that's one of the other big milestones. He released Haint Tales 2 here in the store last year, and that was one of the coolest things. That's one of the coolest books, by the way. But that I've been a part of. It was really awesome. I obviously at this point, like, don't want to talk about people until I have them, like, until it's like a little closer or whatever. But I will say one of the big ones that's coming up is Patrick Kinloin, who's doing, he did Gehenna and Frontiersman, and he's got Tigress Island coming out. That actually comes out this Wednesday. And it's already like the hot spec book of the week coming up. He'll be here May 11th because his band Drug Church will be in town playing at the Albatross, and then he's going to come by here and do a signing that morning. So yeah, there's some really, really cool stuff coming up. Can't talk about a lot of it until I have it really nailed down, but just, there's a lot of stuff coming up and a lot of stuff for the community and in the community.
So it sounds like we can expect more in-store signings. Yeah. More indie comics from the local community. Great, Dan, this has been great. I'm so glad that Black Cat exists. Happy 1-year anniversary and many, many more, brother. And I think that being said, Shortbox Nation, that was our episode, all right? We just finished talking to Dan Hastings, owner of Black Cat Comics, about what it's been like owning a shop for the past year, his first year. I hope to all you aspiring comic shop owners, you guys learned a thing or two. And if you don't have any dreams of owning your own shop, maybe you picked up a new title to check out. I do want to reiterate, man, we're doing this giveaway for this custom sketch, absolute Batman sketch cover done by artist extraordinaire, tattoo artist extraordinaire, Nick Wagner. Be on the lookout for that post on Instagram. And that's what I got for you this week. I hope you guys enjoyed another episode of The Short Box. If you do, you know what you got to do for me. Rate, review, leave some positive feedback, share this episode, do all those things because it really does help me out. And I'm going to take a breath and tell you, have a great day. Read a dope comic book and come back next week for another episode of The Short Box. I love you guys. Peace.